Let's talk about the Warriors and Rockets first.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So interesting series, obviously, incredibly back and forth series that was fun to watch the entire way. The Warriors come out on top 103-89. The big difference here is just like obvious threefold, right? So first and foremost, Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield goes absolutely insane. 9 for 11 from the 3-point line, 33 points. I think he had like 22 by the midpoint of the second quarter. It was ridiculous, completely ridiculous game. Unbelievable performance from Buddy Hield. Second, as you mentioned, the adjustment that the Warriors made in order to defeat the zone. Instead of having any shooters or any non-shooters out on the court with guys like Gary Payton, along with Draymond Green, they completely shrunk the rotation. No Gary Payton at all tonight. You see 7 minutes of Jonathan Kuminga that were not very good. You get 11 minutes of Kevon Looney, which, like, if I remember correctly, lined up like pretty well with when Draymond was off the court. And you get 3 minutes of Quentin Post in, I think, the second quarter, and that was it for the bench. The rest of the unit was the starters the whole way, and it allowed them to have 3 real shooters in Steph, Pods, and Hield on the court. And then you have Jimmy, who obviously has a lot of gravity as a serious scorer. And then you have Draymond Green being the guy who can kind of play make from the middle of the zone if you want to. So that was a good adjustment. And I felt like their ball movement against the zone in the 2 big lineup was much better. The third piece of it is that guy that we just talked about in the middle, and Draymond Green. Draymond quarterbacked everything tonight to me. The defense was astounding from the Warriors. They mixed in some zone looks. They had some man-to-man, obviously. Draymond was unbelievable in his one-on-one matchup on the block with Şengün. I know that you want to talk about the efficacy of that strategy for the Rockets, but it is the reality of what the Rockets did in this game was rely on him quite a bit to try and score over Draymond, and Draymond completely shut that shit down. He goes for 16, 6, and 5 on the offensive end as well on 15 shots, but he did his job offensively. But the defense, the anticipation all over the court, the one-on-one defense on Şengün, the ability to captain that defense from the back line, when he is engaged and locked in like he was for the final third of the regular season and he has been through the playoffs, there's just no better defender in the NBA. And that is the reality of the Draymond Green experience. So those are the 3 things that stood out to me. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I agree. And, just starting with Draymond there, because I think it is important what he did on the defensive end. He also, I think he gets a pretty decent whistle on the defensive end, but it is what it is. He's allowed to be physical. That physicality increases even in the playoffs. And I'm not trying to take away from it. It's just like he understands how he gets officiated, what he can get away with, and he takes that to the brink. And that's an important part of understanding what you're able to do. I do want to mention real quick, because offensively, he frustrates me at times. He ended up with 8 threes tonight. Not all of that was his fault. He had to take 2 heaves at the end of shot clock because the offensive broke down. He was getting some buckets in the first half when Steph Curry had 0 points late into the first half. And so Buddy's 20 points or whatever it was, and I think Draymond's 10 were really, really important. It's funny, at halftime, the only players in double digits were Draymond, Buddy Hield, and Amin Thompson, I believe, which was just crazy at halftime. But one of my favorite plays from Draymond tonight, he's helping off the ball. Şengün has it at free throw line. I think we both believe Şengün's a really good court mapper and processor. Draymond watches Amin cut to the other block, and he's trying to help on the opposite block because Adams has somebody posted. Draymond steps over there for a second, knowing Amin is cutting, knowing Şengün's going to see all of it, and then just jumps into the passing lane and steals it. And it's we talk about court mapping offensively, Sam. I don't think we talk about court mapping defensively enough. Yes. And I'm not sure anybody does it as good as him in terms of ball, angle, open man, cutter, shooters. Where do I need to be to try to take this stuff away?
Using your length to be able to cut that off as well. His 7'1", 7'2" wingspan to be able to understand what he can get to and what he can't get to as well. He just has that, like, he's not a gambler, right? Like in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Like Tari Eason has somewhat similar measurements to Draymond Green, right? But you will see Tari gamble and try to go for the ball so often, and he over pursues and ends up putting them in a bad position. Like it happened at one point, I think in the third quarter, where maybe it was like late second or something, where he like way over pursued trying to get a steal in transition, and Draymond caught it probably 35, 40 feet from the rim, took 3 dribbles to the basket and just hit a left-handed layup as Tari tried to recover. And it's just that little stuff, right? Where it's Draymond just doesn't make those errors like ever on defense, and he captains everybody and makes sure everybody else is in the best position. The guy's unbelievable. He is absolutely unbelievable on the defensive end of the court. And again, like the case for me for him not winning Defensive Player of the Year was just that I didn't think he played well in the middle of the year. I think that he was just not quite as engaged as what he typically is. But when he's locked in and when he is going at it in the way that he has for the last third of the season, and since then, there is no better defender in the NBA than Draymond Green.
Yeah. And we talked about it all series too. It wasn't like it was just a game 7 heroics on the defensive end. We talked about it all series long. I also want to give the other guys a shout out in terms of, I mean, you talked about it. They didn't go to their bench much. Almost every starter played 40 minutes. All of them did, other than Hield. Steph played 46. Jimmy played 45. Obviously, we know Jimmy is a two-way player on the wing. I thought like Steph had some interesting possessions. At one point, he had like 3 stocks, maybe in the first half. He had 10 rebounds. All 10 were defensive. Like he was hunting loose. Yeah. Obviously, he's not like out jumping a Min Thompson for a defensive rebound to keep him in off the offensive boards. He just was super active. And I always appreciate that about a star. I'm sure people were getting antsy when he had 3 points at halftime and he still wasn't getting it going early in the second half, but he was finding other ways to be impactful. Pods takes a charge. Hell, even Buddy Hield, I think it was back-to-back possessions in the fourth quarter where he comes up with stuff. He blocked Şengün. Şengün got him isolated like 12 feet from the rim, spun off of him, and Hield blocked it from behind. So I just think those little effort plays, those little impactful plays, whether it's disruption, taking a charge, coming down with a defensive rebound. Yes, Draymond is the anchor and the guy, but those other guys filling in with their parts and their roles, I always like to give them at least a little bit of love for that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought Buddy on both ends tonight, like really had it. In a way that, you know, last year, for instance, like we saw him struggle a little bit to adjust to that Philadelphia situation.
Yeah.
Didn't look as sweet as what it could have possibly been. And he goes through ups and downs. Like he's not an effective offensive player when he's not shooting the basketball well. Correct. Right. And it becomes really hard to play him in those moments. But when he's feeling it, he can turn a game and he can really, really change the complexion of a game the entire way. So you just look at the last 2 games. He played 17 minutes in game 6, 0 points, 4 fouls, was terrible. And then game 7, they start him, bring him in, say, hey, we need you to bust the zone. And he busts the zone and goes for 9 threes and 33 points. Like he is the biggest reason to me outside of Draymond Green that the Warriors are moving on tonight, like ahead of Steph and Curry. And I thought Steph was outstanding in the second half as well.
Yeah. And I always like to bring up Steph's gravity. I actually was like counting them up and then I stopped at halftime because I was having to rewind so much, but I do think it's always important to do that. Just if you want to see Steph's gravity, go watch the first offensive possession for the Warriors in each half. And one was a Draymond make, one was a Pods miss because Min Thompson is absolutely insane on the defensive end in his own right and had a ridiculous rotation block. But the Warriors just started both halves with, hey, you're going to put 2 on Steph Curry off the ball, not to mention his screening. I love his screening as well. But yeah, Hield had the block on Şengün, and then I think he came back. I don't know if it's the next possession or not. He gets the steal that leads to the, what did they end up calling it? I fast forward through the call, a flagrant or what, clear path or whatever. Anyway, they got the free throws plus the ball, and like it just continued this run. And then I thought it was kind of cool that Steph saved the night celebration for Hild's 3 as opposed to his 3. I was waiting for the night. You knew it was going to come. And he got it on the Hield make.
Yeah, it was great. Steph, by the way, tonight, 22, 10, and 7.
Yeah. And four stocks,
yeah.
Sam. Still 2 steals, 2 blocks, and a charge drawn.
3 points at halftime, and he comes away with like a near triple double and plays well on defense. And I mean, again, I'm so glad you brought up the idea of Steph's gravity. Everything within Houston's zone was bent on stopping Steph.
Yes.
Like we talked about that after game 6. It was the reality tonight as well. They didn't want Steph to get free looks. And, he played off of that gravity so incredibly well.
I will say this, if Pods makes threes tonight, this game probably gets out of hand even sooner. Yes. Pods was, I think, 1 of 7. Yeah, 1 of 7 from 3. And most of his were good looks. I don't remember any heaves at the end of shot clocks for him. There might be one in there, but he got really good looks, didn't knock him down. And when Moody went 0 for 3 and his jumper looked really broke actually. But
it did. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's 1 of 10 between those two guys on some pretty decent looks, where them missing is probably what kept Houston in the game for as long as they did. And then eventually, obviously it broke down and Golden State went on their run. But, I thought it was an impressive performance for Golden State, led by Draymond on the defensive end, led by Steph's gravity and Hield shot making on the offensive end. And Jimmy Butler, there was times I was like, okay, Jimmy, are we pulling a James Harden here? Why are we not shooting the basketball? And then he went on like a 6-0. Like, I should know better. He went on a 6-0 run in the fourth quarter. That's just like, okay, my bad. This is me just being mad because my wife loves you. So I'll give you your due respect. At one point I paused the game because I let it get ahead so I can fast forward. And it just happens to pause on Jimmy Butler alone. That's the frame. And my wife's like, oh, this is an interesting spot to pause the game. I'm just like, good Lord, go back to reading your book.
Look, I think the Warriors shot what they should have shot tonight overall from 3. What I mean?
That is a fair point, Sam, because they still shot 43%. So essentially you take all of those other guys' misses and gave them all to Buddy Hield as makes, right? Yeah.
And fair. Rockets fans might look at this and say look, they shot 42% from 3. We shot 30% from 3. That's the ball game right there. But to me, in terms of the shots that were being generated, and this is where we can now move to the Rockets, I think the Warriors generated a shit ton of open threes tonight.
I agree with
against the zone.
Yes.
We talked about the fact that the key to this game was going to be the Warriors figuring out the zone. And there's probably no 3 better players in the league to figure out a zone than Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy. Like, between Jimmy's off-ball cutting and movement ability, Draymond's ability to play in the middle of the defense and be able to kind of kill it from the inside out, and then Steph's gravity and ability to move without the ball as well. Like, those are the 3 guys on top of their basketball IQ that you would really trust to be able to figure out a zone. And they did it, right? They absolutely did it. They were super successful at it. And that's what turned the game to me.
Yeah.
Let's move to the Houston side.
Okay.
Because I think Rockets fans will rightfully have some issues with how they got their offense, maybe, which is something you wanted to talk about. And I'll kind of give you the floor to talk about it. But it was a lot of Şengün ISO, Şengün mid-post area, elbow, free throw line. Let's get him the ball and try and allow him to score against the best defender in the league right now in Draymond Green. I have some thoughts on, maybe I'll just kind of let you go, because I have some thoughts on did they have a better option kind of, but I'll let you kind of talk about that, because it was frustrating, I'm sure, for Rockets fans on some level, that it was a very stagnant offense tonight. There was nothing, it felt like, that they could really do, I guess.
Stagnant is the key word for me there. And my big issue was, if you want to play through Alperen Şengün in isolation, I'm fine with it. Go ahead. I'm cool with it. But to just continue to put him in isolation against Draymond Green, I do not think is a calculation that makes sense. Even you could see a difference when it was pods, even Buddy Hield. I know Buddy got him on the block on the one. If you're creating switches because of off the ball actions and stuff that you're running to force Golden State to switch. And then you're running isolations against Pods, against Hield, against Curry, whoever. I'm cool with it. What I did not like seeing was isolation against Draymond, where it's true, just like stagnant, catch the ball at 15 feet and then go try to create the advantage. Against Jimmy Butler, same thing. Like I don't love that for Şengün. It's an advantage, but it's not a crazy advantage. And I would say against Draymond, it's a negative. It's not an advantage. And even against Looney, he had one or two where it was different. And so there's two things I would have liked to see, Sam, if they were going to play through Şengün in this way. One, force the switches, throw him the ball, get out of the way. Or two, get him to catch on the move. Like there was nothing creative to it, in my opinion, where it was anything more than throw the ball to Şengün and then maybe a min cuts baseline, maybe a min gets an offensive rebound, something like that. And so that's all I was saying is like, I would have liked something a little bit more creative, forcing switches or getting him to catch on the move. And my other thing's like, where's like a fun min ball screen action where he's the handler with Şengün or he's the roller with Şengün, or like you have these very unique talents. Neither of them can shoot, so find a different way to use them. I don't know. I just came away a little underwhelmed with the creativity and the flow, and like you said, the emphasis on stagnant of the offense.
So I agree with you mostly on that point. I think they could have tried to be more creative in the matchups that they created. Also, the Warriors were kind of flipping in and out of zone for a decent amount of the time.
Yep.
Right. Sure. And that's where it becomes a little bit challenging, I think, to run that kind of offense, because that offense plays directly into the Warriors' hands playing zone defense. Right. And when they're in that set, it's going to be a little bit easier for them to continue to contest around the rim. Now, the issue for that is, to me, the way to beat a zone is you either need to just crush the offensive glass like they did in game 6. They didn't play zone a lot in game 6, the Warriors. I can't really remember if they played zone in game 6 at all, to be honest. But you can crush the glass and you can just say, okay, we're going to have Steven Adams just be there in the dunker spot. We're going to have him carve out space. We're going to go that way, right? And Şengün will be there following up his own misses, everything like that. Or you have to run like some high ball screen stuff where you try and get, somebody locked on one side of the court, and then you have to flip the court to be able to, hit cross court kickouts, hit cross wing kickouts, get the ball moving, make the defense rotate, use your ball movement to the advantage, flash a men in Şengün from, the baseline up to the elbow, into like the foul line extended area, and then flash them back and forth. Like that's another route that you can use here to be able to kind of make this work if you're going to play two non-shooters on the court all the time. Other than Fred, I don't know that they have the playmaking and like court vision to be able to do that. Like I like Tari as a player, but like he's a guy that comes off the bench for a reason to me. And it's because like, he's not there yet in terms of his skill level, in terms of the way he sees the court. His finishing as well continues to come up and be an issue from time to time. Not a great shooter yet as well. Jabari Smith, like just can't dribble yet and isn't a great passer. Jaylen Green, who again, we'll talk about at some point here, is an issue. Not a great court mapper, doesn't have great vision. Dylan Brooks, like also not really a passer, not really a playmaker, right? So yes, they have a men in Şengün, and yes, like you can make that work with Fred, a men in Şengün, but you need all three of them on the court at the same time. If they're in like a zone, or if they're in some sort of, funky matchup-y defense where you need to get them into rotation. Otherwise they're switching, they're pre-switching things. They're kind of communicating on the back line with the league's best defensive quarterback. I mean, it's just hard to me. Like I think that at the end of the day, the issue for the Houston Rockets is they do not have enough offensive firepower. And this is why Rockets fans will freak out at me whenever I say trade for Giannis and trade Amen and Şengün for Giannis, whatever it takes. Right. But that's the kind of player that you need a number one to win series like this. Like they played well to get the Warriors to this setting. the Warriors are what turned out to be like a really good matchup for throughout the back half of the season, not the back half, probably the back third of their season. What was their best lineup? The two big lineup with Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün, because they could just crash and be able to attack the basket and do everything like that and control the interior of the paint as well in those moments defensively. But you still need a guy who can just go get you a bucket when games get really tight defensively. You need somebody who can, in Giannis's case, bully his way to the basket whenever he wants. In Kevin Durant's case, who can shoot over the top of anybody in the NBA and get a clean look. In Devin Booker's case, who can create a step back three and be able to fire. Like, I'm bringing up other names other than Giannis that like reportedly, theoretically could be available, but you need to do other things is the key. It can't just be this one option to me where it's Şengün, who's a good number two, but is not a number one guy, like on a great NBA playoff, like title contending team.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like I've been in some group chats and stuff where people have kind of taken shots at Şengün after tonight. And listen, we've highlighted it all year that the finishing has been a worry, and there's no denying that. I thought his all around game was fine yet again. He had 14 rebounds, he had 5 assists. I think defensively, my notes were very specific on his defense. I think I said, he can be a cog of a scheme, not the anchor, but productive, impactful, positive cog of that scheme. I still believe that, but he scored 21 points on 23 shots. The problem is that shouldn't have to be your offensive identity. Is Alperen Şengün 15-foot mid-post isolations, especially against Draymond Green. But to your point, and this is why I said, if Fred goes for 25 again, they probably win. But was he going to do it? I think it made in 4 games in a row to close out the series. I just wasn't banking on that after what we had seen from Fred all season, as much as I love him. But it's just like you need, whether it's Giannis or like a perimeter player that can take that. And theoretically, that's what Jaylen Green is supposed to be. The problem is we got 1 game of 7. And I'm trying not to be too hard on Jaylen Green because it was his first playoff series. But man, it would have been nice to see a little bit of growth throughout the series. And we saw like that explosive game 2. Not surprising that he had a couple bad games after that can happen to players, but then it never responded. It never bounced back through the final 5 games of the series. And that's just, it's disappointing. I don't know. It would be hard to look at this and say, okay, that's the guy, right?
Well,
moving forward.
You know what you talked about throughout the playoffs for the
Pistons,
Detroit Pistons was, this is a fact-finding mission.
Yeah.
Right. You're trying to find out as much information that you need to know on who to extend, who not to extend, who matters long-term, who doesn't matter long-term. I think we got our answer in this series with Jaylen Green, right? He had 1 great game. He was terrible the other 6 games in this series, all due respect. Like, he did a job defensively in game 6 on Steph and Curry that I thought was pretty impressive. He had defensive moments in this series, but like, you don't have Jaylen Green out there for his defense, right?
Correct. Yeah.
You have Jaylen Green out there for his offense, right? And Jaylen Green in 6 of the games in this series was genuinely terrible on offense. He was awful. He missed open players constantly. He really only got buckets like in transition, I would argue, like clean looks in transition or semi-transition. A lot of the half-court stuff was abominably bad to me. Like, there's just not another way to put it. He missed open shots consistently. That's the biggest like kind of misnomer, I think, with Jaylen Green, in like the idea that he is this like Devin Booker in waiting, right? He's just nowhere near that level shooter is the issue. And he never has been throughout the course of his career. And on top of it, he's nowhere near the finisher that people think he is in the half court. People will look at like the great finishes on tape and say, oh my God, like he has all this athleticism. It's fantastic. But then you look at the totality of everything he does at the rim. He fades away from the rim constantly. He doesn't access his athleticism as consistently as you would like to see because he's not strong enough to do that yet, like through his lower half and through his core. So like, to me, I get that he's young and he's got potential and he's certainly a real athlete in terms of his twitch, but the best guys in the NBA in that role particularly are the guys that blend twitch and power. And he's missing that latter piece of it while also not being a great decision maker on offense who can make passing reads consistently, and while also not being the level shooter that he needs to be. Like, I think he's like very far away still from being the level of player that the Rockets need. And I think this series proved it.
And I think the thing with Jaylen Green, it's always been about consistency, right? We've seen the crazy months and then we've seen the bad months. Like, can you count on your number one perimeter option to do that? Like, can you go into every playoffs for the next 6 years if you're a Rockets fan? Like, man, I hope this is the good May for Jaylen Green, right? Like, I hope this is the good month he's going to have, because if he has a bad month, we're out in the first round. And if he has a good month, well, then maybe we can make a run to the finals. I just think you want somebody with more consistency than that. And I think the scary part for me was, like, even if he would have had one other explosive game, you know, like, or another 28-point game and a 20-point game, I've been like, okay, like, there's a little up and down. It's his first series. It's against the Warriors. Like, all right, we can, I can talk myself into it. I can't talk myself into it as it sits right now without being there in the building. Like, I don't know who Jaylen Green is, his work ethic, his mental make, like all of that. And I'm not saying there's questions about it. I'm just saying it would take me knowing him and what I believe about his improvement potential moving forward. Because everybody always says young, Sam. Just because you're young doesn't mean you're going to develop all of these things. We've seen plenty of young players. You know, it was, I'll bring up a tough one here. Like Killian Hayes, it was always, he's young. He's young. He's only 19. He's only 20. He's only 21. It's like, well, yeah, just because he's only 20 doesn't mean at 25 he's going to be any better than he is right now. So,
and to that point, like, have you seen a lot of growth with Jaylen Green when it comes to like court mapping and making like high level decisions in terms of blending the scoring game with the passing game?
Not consistently.
I would argue no.
We've come on and we've given him credit for specific games or short stretches where we're like, the passing was good today or the defense was really good today, but consistently we go on the same roller coaster with him of, all right, we got to give him some love because he's been playing well, but now he's not playing well. So now we got to, you know, it's the same roller coaster. So I would say no, not over a consistent stretch. The biggest thing is the shot making when it's going is a lot of fun. And when it's not, it's not great, but no, I would say no, I haven't seen a huge growth in that.
Yeah. I mean, I just haven't, and I'm sorry. I have seen real growth on defense. Like, I will give him credit for that.
Sure.
Like, I think genuinely the growth on defense is a real factor for him. And like is deserving of credit and is deserving of, you know, real statement. Like in games where he does not play well, he has moments where like he really gets into guys on defense. And like that is a real positive thing that he's bringing to the table more consistently. Like, I don't want to just shit on him, but like he needs to continue to make those strides offensively. And I think we're at a point with the Rockets where, you know, we're kind of out of time.
So
for him, not for everybody else on the team, but for him, I think that they're kind of out of time.
That's why this conversation matters. It's not like, hey, let's say that Jaylen Green had a rough series. It's what does that mean for the Rockets? A team that I would assume wants to continue to push this thing forward. And if you just run it back, how much are you pushing it forward if you continue to not have a number one option / what are you willing to give up to go get said number one option with whatever options are out there this offseason? So like, I think that's why it becomes important is the data collection through these 7 games was at the very least, Jaylen Green is not the answer as the number one option in the very near future. Yeah. And you need some sort of perimeter player. Cause again, they looked a lot better when Fred VanVleet was taking it back and scoring 25 a game. To me, that's the proof of concept. It's not that it's gonna be Fred. It's that when Fred did it at a high level, things looked a whole lot better. To me, that's proof
and the proof of concept is that tonight in Game 7, when they needed offense the most, they gave the ball to a men. bring the ball up the court.
Yeah.
And like, he was the primary creator for a lot of it. And you can say you were riding the hot hand, but like, Amen is somewhat limited right now still too. And again, like, you are not going to find a bigger Amen Thompson fan than me. I voted the guy defensive player of the year, and I think he was their best player for the back half of the regular season. Like, I love the guy. I think he's fantastic. He is probably not ready to be like the number one guy either. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a ceiling where I think he can reach that because the athletic tools are so insane. And I know for a fact that that dude's work ethic is like out of this world in terms of what he's going to be. And he impacts the game across the board. Like, he impacts the game in every regard. I thought that the way that he kept this team in the game tonight, from that, like, I don't know, 4-minute mark or so of the second quarter through to like the midpoint of the third quarter, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes left of the third quarter, whenever he like had that thing where he came down funky on his left calf. Like, that was unbelievable. He had that tip in over like 3 Warriors where he just elevated over the top and like put his left arm as a righty, like over the top of them, and somehow tipped the ball into the basket. I can't even respond to how incredible that was. He was unbelievable tonight. And yeah, I mean, look, like, that guy is, to me, like, he is their building block. But at the same token, like, if a better guy comes available, if Giannis or something, like, I'm only moving Amen for Giannis, to be clear. Like, I'm not saying, oh, you move Amen for Devin Booker or anybody else. Like, but if Giannis is on the table, like, I'm doing that for sure, because I think that Giannis is incredible.
Yeah, no, I thought Amen was really good tonight, and it was the offensive rebounding. It was the cutting. It was, like, if the mid-range jumper would have went a little bit, it would have been even better. Like, that's the one thing, like, I think both of those got, I watch it from a SARS perspective, and it's like, the way people are guarding them right now, if they can just dribble into a mid-range jumper, I think that's going to unlock some things as well. It doesn't even have to be all the way to the 3-point line yet. But I thought he was really good both ways. Obviously, I think he was he their leading scorer tonight, 9 rebounds. Obviously, we know what he does on the defensive end. Yeah.
So Dorian, shout out for the super chat in the YouTube section. By the way, we're live. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're like under 100 away from 30,000. So we appreciate all of you for listening. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. If you're here watching us, we do this often during the playoffs. Who would you trade Jaylen Green for other than Giannis? I mean, to me, it's not who I'd trade Jaylen Green for. Like, I would move Jaylen Green off of this team because I think they're probably a better team if Jaylen Green is not on the team, frankly. I think that you can find a scoring guard that is more valuable, frankly, than Jaylen Green. But I any number one option would be real. Like, I would easily trade Jaylen Green for Zach LaVine. And I'm not saying they'd be like drastically better, but I think they'd be better with Zach LaVine. Like, for sure. I think Zach LaVine's a more efficient scorer than Jaylen Green is. He's a better shooter. I think he has a better handle. He's a better finisher. I think he is, like, we talk about Zach LaVine's decision making. I do think he's a slightly better decision maker than Jaylen Green. Like, that's the level, though, of like what I think an upgrade is. Like, I'm not certain that somebody like Malik Monk wouldn't be better than Jaylen Green in this role, frankly. But, I think Jaylen is better defensively than Malik is. Like, that's a real thing here.
What I find interesting with Jaylen is, like, where does this go for him if he ends up not being this? Because this is the thing I worry about. Some guys who are these ultra scorers, whatever, like, do you settle into, like, what are you if you're the number 2 option? What are you if you're the number 3 option? I think that's why the defense is so important with Jaylen, is if he continues to grow his defense, Sam, well, then it's like, okay, you can't be our number 1 because that's not there. But you can be our number 3 guy. And because you've improved your defense, and whether this is the Rockets or somebody else, it's like, okay, that's not necessarily, you don't just have to go be the 6th man off the bench, right? Because your defense continues to grow and improve. It's just with that contract and all of that, I would be interested to know what's the value, what's the fit with another team. How would other teams value him, and what role can because he's obviously talented. So it's like, I'm always fascinated by this archetype. How do they find their role where they're talent, but what they can practically do meshes well within a team. You know, like where is that spot where it all hits together? And I find myself feeling and questioning and wondering about that with Jaylen Green.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's where it's at. And look, like we're shitting on Jaylen now for a minute because a couple people have asked about Jaylen here in the comments, but like, to me, it's not just Jaylen. It's that they don't have enough creators beyond Şengün and for like Amen in transition. It's very, very bad right now. They do not have enough guys beyond who they have on the, like beyond Jaylen, who's supposed to be the number one perimeter option. Like they need a number two guy on the perimeter as well. Amen might be that, but he's more of a transition guy that, you know, can attack whenever he gets a crease and everything like that.
That, I guess that's where I was going. Is like, I wonder what Jaylen would look like if you got that guy and he could, like, what if he settled into the number 3 role? Like if it was this, whoever they trade for, get whatever, let's say they use draft picks to do it or something. If it's like that guy, then Şengün, then Jaylen as the number 3, like I'm kind of intrigued by that. I think that's an interesting role for him if he can settle into that and be comfortable with it. And, you know, then maybe you stagger him into your second unit and allow him to be aggressive there. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm just am very fascinated and interested to see where it kind of settles in after we see this and where the Rockets see it after going through this 7-game series.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, like another piece of this is that, you know, here, like, you know, somebody asked about Reed Sheppard in the comments, like how good of a fit is Reed Sheppard? Like Reed is the guy that they're really counting on, I think, to be the offensive engine. And from what I understand, like they're very excited about Reed still based on like how the season went and everything. I could understand if there were some questions. They have like very few questions about Reed. It's just that, you know, they need to figure out how to get him on the court with the roster fits around him more than anything. And, you know, we'll see what they do. I assume this team's not going to be quiet in the offseason. Like I think they're going to go for, this is a season or an offseason that is projecting to have quite a bit of real movement in terms of players available, in terms of stars potentially available. I would expect the Rockets to be very active in trying to get those guys.
Yeah, and you know, they have the club option on Fred to start off with it, you know, and that's a $45 million. I assume that's not getting exercised. So, yeah, they are going to be a really interesting offseason because it's such. I mean, we rave about their roster all the time, all of the young talent and all of that, and the draft picks and everything. And you were just the number 2 seed in the West, and we should give them love for that. And we have given them love for that. But how do you keep it rolling? How do you continue to grow that and do that? And so they will be a fun offseason to track because they're going to be real players, like you said.
I think they are going to be real players this offseason as well. I think that is absolutely the reality of where their situation is. And they've accumulated the assets to be able to do so. Like they have another top 10 pick this year from Phoenix that could end up spiking if they end up getting lucky in the lottery again. They have another Brooklyn pick coming in 2027. They have another Dallas like pick in 2029 that could be very valuable based on where that organization's going right now. And I think it's like Dallas or Phoenix, whatever team finishes worse. So that's an incredibly valuable one. They have all of their own picks moving forward beyond the 2026 pick that goes out to, if I remember correctly, Brooklyn, but I'm not certain of that off the top of my head. So like they have a number of assets here that they're going to be able to utilize if they want to get into the star trade, on top of having Amen Thompson, if it's like a true elite level player, Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Reed Sheppard, etc. Right. Yeah. So they've real guys here to be able to play with.
For sure.
That's all I've got on this game. Maybe we'll do some playoff previews at the end, but in terms of this game, that's where we're at.